Welcome to our monthly ACTS Town Hall. Thanks to our member companies for helping make these town halls possible. Your support makes our mission a reality. Together in safety, stronger in collaboration. The ACTS Town Halls are an open forum to discuss concerns and present potential solutions to improve damage prevention and excavation safety. These town halls are meant to be a discussion, and you're encouraged to ask questions and share solutions. A recording of this town hall will be posted on our YouTube channel and sent via email after the town hall has concluded. Before the end of the town hall, each of our panelists will highlight a moving forward step to ensure we stay focused on practical and impactful solutions. We are pleased to have a knowledgeable and experienced panel with us today. So to get us started, our moderator will begin with brief introductions.
All right, thank you, Tyler, for the introduction, and I'd like to welcome everyone to the town hall today. So in our podcast, we will be covering the importance of protecting underwater utilities like fiber optic, electric, water, and we'll have a special focus on pipelines. We want to emphasize that although we're protecting infrastructure, most importantly, we are also protecting the mariners who are working around this infrastructure. And we want to emphasize how our initiatives can actually help save lives, protect the environment, and protect infrastructure, which are our three overarching goals. Our program, our joint program that we're going to emphasize today and initiatives along with new technology is intended to target all waterways, whether it's lakes, bays, rivers, Pacific, Atlantic, or the Gulf of Mexico. And so we're really excited that our program has grown over the years, our stakeholder outreach, and more importantly, what is special to me is the collaboration amongst industry groups and industry organizations. And we'll hear more about that as we go through our program. So now I would like the panel to introduce themselves. I'll start off. I'm Ed Landgraf. I'm the director of Marine Safety 811 and the CAMO organization. Devin?
Good morning. Devin Carlock with Cottrell Contracting, Vice President of Safety and Government Affairs, and also the Council for Dredging and Marine Construction Safety President.
Okay, Scott.
Yeah, good morning. I'm Scott Crawford. I serve as President and CEO with Virginia 811.
Thank you. Craig.
Good morning. Craig Taylor with Pine Bluff Sand and Gravel. I'm the Director of Safety and HR. Also a board member of CDMCS.
Okay, and Lou.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Lou Nash. I'm a general manager at Magitronics Corporation, where we do marine positioning, guidance, and underwater imaging systems that support dredging and marine construction operations.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, I would like to set the stage on what we have going on, and so that way you can understand. I hope that there's people here who are new to this topic and are excited to learn. And one of the things we want to do today is be able to share with you where to get resources, help, and assistance and training, all free, to help you do your job better each day and hopefully more safe. So we exist, all of us on our call, is to be able to close the gap between all the great work that we've done on land with safety, especially excavation safety, 811, damage prevention, safety awareness, different common ground, best practices that we've implemented on land. But we've really tried to focus on closing that gap between on-land safety and on-land damage prevention and 811 and what we do in the marine environments. And so this has been, just like stoplights at intersections. It's been driven by fatalities, unfortunately, spills, releases, critical infrastructure downtime in marine environments have all helped or facilitated our effort in how we are trying to close that gap between what we do on land and what we do in marine environments. In the past, we actually averaged one fatality per year between some type of marine vessel and some type of marine pipeline. And, one person, on average died per year. And that was a real driver. Again, also in the past, we were seeing 8 to 10 spills or damages in marine environments per year to underwater infrastructure. So we're trying to, really learn from our past and be better in the future and be more proactive. So that's our challenge today, is trying to be proactive and give people and stakeholder the resources they need to do their job better. We're going to talk a lot today about communication and how communicating with one another is so important. So our poster child incident that was the big driver back in 2020 was a 5 fatality incident where a dredge operating contacted a propane pipeline. So very, very unfortunate incident. And that was kind of really kicked our program into high gear, caused us to take a step back and say, hey, what are we really doing? How can we actually reduce these damages? A lot of what we're also uncovering is new technologies, and I think Craig may touch on a little bit of that. I know Lou is going to touch on some technologies, and I would just like to highlight one technology as I wrap up here called distributed fiber optic sensing. And this is already being used on wind farms in different type of fiber cables internationally. But the fiber optic sensing initiative can help protect against anchor drags, dredging, or other disturbances real time. It actually has different types of visibility you can see, again, real time in different environments. And so this is something that Texas 811 is pioneering through its Guardian system, and just another of what we call layer of protection. And if you've seen the Swiss cheese model, when all of these holes line up, that's when you have an accident. So we're real excited about different technologies. Again, one of them being the fiber optic sensing through the Guardian program. If you want to know more about that, get back to me. So at this time, let's roll into our speakers who have graciously joined us today, and I will turn it over to Devin Carlock. But before I do, I do want to let you know that our Marine Safe 811 program, this is a great place to find resources. This has our new best practices. It actually has a hazard avoidance checklist, which is something that is really proven to be a benefit on what is your checklist memory joggers when you're doing projects. We also have a dredge and marine construction 101 document that tells you about the dredge and marine construction industry, the different types of equipment you have, what you actually might see on a one-call notification. So, and then we have our best practice guideline. And so this was a product from what we called our Pipeline Task Force, which is a joint industry effort. Much of it was led by CDMCS and Devin's group, which he'll talk about. So thank you to Devin. This was also an NTSB requirement that we update this best practice. And finally, if I could also show you training and education, our online training is here. It's in both English and Spanish, and it is free training. And all of this is brought to you through funding by our members. So I want to thank all of our members of our program, for helping us with reach. So with that, now I will turn it over to Devin Carlock.
Thank you, Ed. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my. Can you see that? Okay.
Yep, I can see it.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Submerged utilities are one of the highest consequence, lowest visibility risk in our industry. The challenge isn't not knowing that they exist. It's ensuring that the knowledge reaches the right people at the right time. And that's the key focus that we do at the CDMCS. CDMCS is a member-driven organization. We are all volunteers, and we discuss and identify problem areas in the dredging industry. And like Ed said, and thank you for the introduction, Ed, for the Pipeline Task Force, where we come together and we discuss, new technologies, things that we can do to prevent, another pipeline strike or utility strike. And having that collaboration, not only with Ed, but with other federal partners as well, is what makes it work. So what we want to do is we want to identify the issues and concerns by risk visibility. Submerged utilities often are poorly marked and inaccurately charted. The root cause, most instances stem from breakdowns, communications, and where awareness, where the awareness is not necessarily the equipment. Operational discipline. Success depends on clear execution in the field. It's just not the planning. And of course, the consequences are the safety risks, the product shutdowns, regulatory involvement, and the financial exposure. And of course, the culture on board. Awareness and accountability must be embedded at every level. So this is the business end of a cutter head. This one does not have teeth on it. Craig knows what he's looking at there. This is a smooth blade, but we have ones, it depends what kind of material. If you're in mud, you have a smooth blade, but equally as dangerous when you're on the project. We utilize multiple systems to be able to address every project. Skip ahead to this photo. The vessel that you see on the right is the ferry, and then the left is the dredge. And those poles sticking up behind the dredge on the stern of the dredge are called spuds. And these range on every dredge depends on, Pine Bluff, and their equipment's much larger. They're going to have larger spuds. These are 70-foot spuds, and they penetrate through the soil, whether it's mud, sand, and that actually is what holds you in place while you're moving ahead and while you're dredging. This is the cutter suction dredge. So one of the big thing on best practices is we verify before we do anything, and we do the one call system. We ensure the operational users, which is the leverman, have access to all the data before the work begins. We establish the no-go zone or no-go zones. These are the buffers, and I believe Lou's going to speak about that in a little bit. And we conduct daily repeatable crew briefings, because the thing that what happens on board is that you say something and then you keep on saying the same thing over and over. People zone out, so you have to keep it interesting. You have to identify and understand to keep it fresh. Let's talk about incidents. Let's talk about what we can do and improve. I'll switch to. Again, another example of a cutter suction dredge. This is a different dredge, but you can still see the spuds in the background, and obviously homes. This is something that we have to worry about, and the transmission lines that go all through there. Again, we work in very tight areas, and where do we see the biggest issues? And it is the disconnect between the available data and the execution. Um, the improvement needs to be, we still have districts or call one centers, 811 call centers, that ask you for the closest intersection. They don't have a marine ticket. Every state that has dredging needs a marine ticket. And we're pushing to have that done, and would love your support. And how to improve awareness, the repetition, the visualization, and the operator accountability. So with that thing, and just a couple of things, these are the things we have posted on the dredge. You know, we do drills, we do thing, and Craig, I'm sure will also touch on this. This is something that we do thing, but again, it's the educational thing, and we know what happens when things go wrong, and when they go wrong, it's big. So with that, I wrap up, and I guess we'll do questions toward the end, but I'll hand it back over to you, Ed.
Right. Yep. Thank you, Devin. And, without your industry being on board and really the dedication from your marine construction and marine excavation and dredging industry, none of this could happen. So kudos to you and your team. And I can tell you that, your industry shows up. And a challenge to the pipeline and utility industry is, you need to show up and support, the dredge and marine construction industry, because at the end of the day, your crew is the one who has lives out there that you're trying to protect.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yep. Thank you, Devin. Now let's turn it over to Scott Crawford, President of Virginia 811, and give your perspective. Thank you for joining us today, Scott.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here on such an important topic, Ed. This is, one thing I want to underscore is something in a lot of the literature and so forth. You may be a state without a beach, but that doesn't mean there's not a threat to underwater utilities in some sort. And so this is really something all of us in the 811 industry really need to concentrate on, and the protection of these underwater utilities, whether it be something coming in from the ocean, as in Virginia, where we see fiber lines coming in. And of course, Virginia is becoming, or it is like the data center capital of possibly the world, it feels like, with so many data centers being built in Virginia. Fiber is such an important piece to keep the globe connected. And a lot of that fiber is of course underwater and needed to be protected. But whether you have an ocean next to you, or whether it's a lake or a river or a wetlands, these challenges, I think, are very unique, very real to all of us. One of the first things that drew my attention to some of the challenges, and something that, I agree with Devin, that possibly future stakeholder discussion could look at, how can we better handle this, whether it's through positive response, a marine ticket, or something along those lines, is that you have an excavator who is submitting a ticket, and within our process, and I feel I can pretty much speak for any of the 811 centers in the country. There may be an exception possibly, but all of us have the mapping from the utility members that are contributed to the center, which then allow us to create these locate requests. And the polygons that we draw over the excavation area, of course, intersect with the affected utilities. We do compensate for water. We have locate requests that are entirely on the water, whether it be the Chesapeake Bay or the, out a couple of miles into the Atlantic Ocean. So we are able to then adequately notify the utilities. But particularly when we see something possibly where an excavator is crossing a river, doing something involving excavation on both sides of the river and across the river, they can run into a problem where, when they submit the ticket and we notify the utilities may give a positive response indicating that it's been marked. And that's because their locators have marked the landline up to the river on both sides and away from the river, but it hasn't included what's in the river. And so there could be the fear that confusion could then come about, and the excavator thinking they have an entirely cleared ticket when the water piece still needs to be located, and that takes longer. In most cases, if I'm not mistaken, I think this is the case for most utilities that have anything going through the water. The locators that they use are generally focused on the land side of it. And when they get something in the water, they need to contact another locate contractor who comes out, and the whole process is a lot more involved. Even potentially, of course, with divers getting involved and using the buoys to make sure they're marked and so forth. So it can take some time, and we just don't want to see anything happen there where there's confusion and it leads to a damage of some sort, or heaven forbid, someone getting hurt. And so the communication piece is essential. And that's one of the roles that I feel the 811 Center can help the most, is ensuring that communication is there. It was so fortunate, Ed, to meet you a couple of years ago and learn about Marine Safe 811. I think Marine Safe 811 is, just me personally, I think that's something that every center needs to be involved with and aware of, and sharing information. We're happy to support Marine Safe 811. We have information on our website about the best practices and so forth. We integrate that into our public awareness activities. It is something that we ensure that is covered in our damage protection efforts with our public awareness team to draw attention to these utilities that are underwater, and to be aware of some of the possible challenges that I mentioned earlier about a ticket indicating that it's clear, but not fully including the water side, and to make sure that the communication is there. I wish I had something that I could share that was absolutely brilliant, that could really help improve the protection of these utilities. I think that's going to continue with continued discussions such as this, and stakeholder efforts, within the states, and getting those involved at the table and coming up with the solutions that are needed. I tend to be very strongly driven toward technology. I love the emerging technologies, love to hear more about the fiber optic sensing technology. There's some really cool things going on there. Possibly another way to look at this too, that I'd love to explore with stakeholders, at least in Virginia, if not beyond, is the idea of geofencing areas on water with some sort of alert system through the 811 Center, not giving specific, obvious, accurate details, because a lot of times the underwater lines can shift and so forth, and erosion occurs, et cetera. But at least that there's a protected barrier along the water. So if Devin's out there on his ship and going along a river, it could be another, like you said, Ed, a layer of protection. Let's make sure the Swiss cheese remains solid and not holes lining up, but something to alert you're entering a zone. Are you sure that there have been markings and utilities notified and so forth? So I think there's a lot of opportunity, and I think it takes efforts like this and other meetings among stakeholders to talk about this, to brainstorm, come up with some ideas, and definitely make use of the resources that are available, which is, Marine Safe 811 is one of the best things I've seen in regard to this topic. So thank you again for letting me be here, and I'm happy to answer questions later as well.
I do have
Yeah.
one question right now, if y'all want to address it. Is there resistance from the states addressing the issue of protecting underwater utilities?
Yeah, maybe I'll take a little bit of a stab at that, and Scott, maybe it's not necessarily resistance. It's how maybe we don't know what we don't know, and we don't know how to address it right effectively. And Scott, your thought there?
Yeah, I will say the stakeholders I'm involved with in Virginia, incredibly passionate and dedicated to safety. And I know that's nothing unique to Virginia. Ed, I'm sorry, I keep picking on you, Ed, but Ed is like one of the most passionate individuals about underwater excavation and protecting underwater utilities that I've ever met. The passion is contagious, and it's admirable. And we do have models of that across our state and across the nation. And so I don't think it's so much a resistance other than really, okay, how? If it's a law change, what would that look like? What would a marine ticket look like in Virginia, and so forth? And unfortunately, and this is getting a lot of traction in various white papers, discussions, and so forth, there is pressure on the overall 811 process. We're busy. In Virginia, we're busy, and I know across the United States, we're busy. Broadband expansion has brought a lot of locate requests coming our way. And so there are some other challenges just dealing with the land utilities to then bring in the water too. So there's a lot going on right now. This is truly an exciting time in damage prevention, with a lot of opportunities for discussions to make things better and to find continuous improvement. So again, I think it's finding the right answers as opposed to resistance to exploring right answers.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Your perspective is really critical to this discussion nationally as this program continues to grow. And I'll also say, there have been underwater cable accidents overseas where intentional ship drags of anchors have disrupted pipelines and fiber optic critical to these countries, especially in the Baltic. So there's also a national infrastructure safety component here, because no matter whether a damage is caused on accident or on purpose, and many times the result is the same. And things that run underwater are usually big, they're usually important, they're hard to repair, the downtime is extended, it's hard to respond if there's an emergency underwater rather than a 5-minute call to 911 and somebody's there. You might be on an accident for hours in the water before a first responder comes up. So it's just much more challenging. And I'll ad lib just for another minute here. Louisiana, right? Credit to them. They have a training requirement for excavators, whether it is on land or marine. So if you're an excavator and you're doing some type of excavation on land, you have to produce a training certificate that at least one person on the job site has that type of excavation training. And this points to our Marine Safe 811 training site that's in English and Spanish. And again, this is a requirement by law. New York has a similar law that's basically on land, and we're looking to help New York along in that marine environment as well. So I think more and more, and it looks like Tao just put that training link in the website, but this is a requirement. And I see more and more states going to that requirement of having 811 and excavation training, no matter whether it's on land or in marine environments. And we stand ready there. A couple other quick things as far as law changes, why you should support them is because 811 laws on land do not fit marine environments. You have a tolerance zone on land in many states that's around 2 feet, 30 inches. It is virtually impossible to mark a marine asset that closely. So you're held or bound by the state law on land by default in your marine areas. So we advocate for lines being marked within 15 feet of their actual location. We have a 75-foot tolerance or marine exclusion zone best practice, right? And we have a 7-day advance notice for marine to give everybody a little bit more time. So look for that coming about in our best practices. Again, they're not laws. However, some states like Mississippi have adopted those guidelines as their law. So I think we're moving the bar, although it's hard, but we need all stakeholders at the table. So with that, I will turn it over. We're doing good on time here. I'll turn it over to Craig Taylor with Pine Bluff Sand and Gravel. That's one of our, really good partners in marine safety and one of our contractors. And Craig, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. It's wonderful to go behind Devin and Scott. You guys started this off great, And what a journey. And what it was this 3 years now. We started this journey, maybe 4 longer. And Devin mentioned culture. We are defining a culture with this group. And as far as resistance, I think, Scott, somebody asked you a question about resistance. I'm seeing minimal resistance. I see we didn't know each other through this journey. And I think that's what's been great about all this. Speaking of culture, one of the points that we just wrapped up, every 6 months, we used to call them safety sharing meetings. We've changed those now to culture meetings. And we had a culture meeting, and we have a really robust good catch near hit program. And Seth, are you on, and can you hear? And if you could, I have asked one of our team members that's out in the field every day to be on this call. Seth, can you say hi if you can hear me? Okay, we're going to go on. Seth is actually out on a dredge. Signal's not great, but anyway, he is one of our surveyors, that our field engineers, that is out in the field and does this stuff. So out of our culture meetings, somebody come up with this. I guess it's new technology. I've never heard of it. Ed's never heard of it. When I first seen it, I'm like, they don't make anything like this. Well, apparently they do. Ed, can you pull up the link that I sent you? I'm just curious if anybody on this call is aware of an underwater gas detector. So this is what one of our guys out in the field come up with is, and this is a whole thing, and this started with the 3-year journey of getting people focused on pipeline safety. So our guys are saying, okay, we see bubbles coming up out of the water all the time. Or what if we miss the bubbles coming up out of the water? So they go and they research stuff like this, and they come up with this thing, and they said, why can't we put this on the head of the dredge? And, we've already, I don't want to take anything away from Lou, but we already have technology that you can put on the end of your buckets, your dredges, and all that kind of stuff that tells you where you're at and all that kind of stuff. But this device apparently can detect multiple types of gases in the water. So they said, why don't we put that on the head of the dredge just in case there is an incident, or not even that we hit the pipeline, that there is a pipeline already leaking that buys us a few more minutes to get out of harm's way. So, I mean, this is just raw. It's brand new. Hey, and the person that came up with this, we give them $500 in cash just 2 days ago for coming up with this idea to bring it out there. So I'm just curious. Anybody heard of this? Ed, can you pull that link up? I'm not seeing it.
Let's see. Did I have it up? I think I had it up and I lost it. Right. Yeah, it should be on the screen now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And scroll on down. This is made by company Frantech. And yeah, I mean, if you scroll on down, so I'm thinking, okay, if you put this on the head of dredges, is this not something periodically? Is it feasible to have it on some of the pipelines? I don't know what the range of this is. I mean, just got the information. Lou, you pretty much stay on top of the technology part of it. Have you heard or aware of anything like this, or anybody using this?
No, Craig, this is new to me.
So, I wanted to throw this out here to the group, and everybody, let's dig. I mean, if that technology's out there, this is something that could, I think, benefit industry and the pipeline companies. I mean, everybody on this call. So,
Yes.
Devin, going back to the culture part of it, I think that's so important that we continue this collaboration of all these different stakeholders here to work together. And if there is stuff out there that will save people's lives, make our jobs easier, technology is changing daily. And get that stuff out and let's share it with one another. Because at the end of the day, what I like about these groups, we're not competing against one another. We want to save lives. So I wanted to share that. And then I learned something else interesting as I was driving home. I was thinking about this meeting, and this is a little bit outside of dredging and marine, or it's dredging and construction, but not marine. So I was talking to a very seasoned pilot. He's held his license for a long time. He's now our operations manager. And there's a system that all the towboat companies use called Rose Point. And Devin, I know you're aware of Rose Point. And it's a charting system for all the boats. Well, so I called and I said, okay, so on Rose Point, does it show all these pipelines? And Brandon said, yes, it shows pipelines. I said, where does Rose Point get that information? I was shocked at what he told me. And he is very student on Rose Point. He said everything north of South Louisiana, it comes straight off of from the Corps of Engineers. Now I'm gonna circle back to that. Now, the other answer to that question was even more shocking. He said South Louisiana, due to the pipelines, the information comes directly from NOAA, which we have been told in this group, NOAA cannot give out that information. Am I correct about that, Ed and Devin? I know we've had this discussion. So, I guess my point is to the group, if NOAA is giving that information to Rose Point in South Louisiana, why can't NOAA give that information elsewhere? And they have the most accurate information on pipelines, to my knowledge. Is that a true statement, Ed?
Well, so Craig, I'll say that that's one of our future initiatives that we've talked about at our pipeline task force meetings, which, by the way, is not just pipeline, it's also other utilities. And I would like to encourage people to join our meetings there. And by the way, we do have a meeting coming up in New Orleans on June the 11th. You'll be getting information on, but we have been trying to get with other agencies like NOAA, the Corps of Engineers, the Coast Guard, and PHMSA, the pipeline regulator, to see if they can share data, more accurate data, so that way they go into the navigable charts for mariners to use. And we've seen a huge gap there. Some people cite national security concerns. Some people, it's just interagency working. And a lot of things that go into the navigation charts are from permit drawing, not as-built drawing. So it's tough. One of my frequent questions, which I worked on one, and I'm going to Houston next week to the Houston Ship Channel on a project with Orion and Kinder Morgan, trying to, make sure that this project is done safely. We've got an abandoned line there. It doesn't belong to Kinder Morgan. We don't know who it is. And so how do we sharpen our pencil there on safety? And that's one of the frequent questions I get. Who owns this line? Who's the current owner? What's the disposition of it? Is it active? Is it dead? How is it cleaned? In case you hit an inactive line, is it still going to cause a spill from residual product in the line? And so credit to these companies that I just mentioned on having that proactive, mindset on how to address these issues, and everybody on this call. So, Craig, it's just tough. I know I said a lot there, but it's just a tough issue.
So going back to that point, which was I started out with 2, but I had 3. The Rose Point thing blew my mind when I got the answer. So why is it not a national security to give it out for South Louisiana, but north of there you can't? So the other data, which is something that Seth, and we're having, it's just due to the fact of being on the water, so we're having technology issues. So Seth and his team brought this up. So we're, our project on a dustpan dredge, imagine, I like using this scenario. It's kind of what Devin showed. Not, the scenario is not quite as what Devin showed, but it's a difference between using a backhoe and a road grader. So it's like we're dropping a huge road grader down and making and keeping the navigation channels open for the ships. So the project is deepening the channel. Well, that's running into, of course, pipeline issues. And at the end of the day, some of these pipelines, and any type of friction between pipeline companies, they've been down there so long, and the way they were put down, they do not know the exact depth of these pipelines. They don't know. And so you think about this, the Rose Point, that's all these boats going up and down, all the navigable waterways. The data they're getting from the Corps, some of it is 20-plus-year-old data. Pipelines do move.
Yeah, so
and it
so
may not
Craig,
be 100% accurate data. Yes, Ed.
Yeah, So I shared a picture of the dustpan dredge on the screen. I don't know if you guys can see that. Did it not come up? Let's see.
I see a small picture on the left-hand screen, up top left.
Yeah. So So I apologize. We were having some signal issues, but we were looking to hear from Seth with Craig's company. He is actually on the dredge, and due to apparently Craig some signal strength, he was unable to get enough signal strength on the dredge to be able to have a live shot from the dredge. So we kind of touted that. We thought we could make it work, but we're under constraints with some technology and signal gods when you're out there on the dredge, right? So, but that's a picture of your dustpan dredge there, that we were having on the screen.
So I guess, a quick takeaways of what I just said. Let's continue building this culture together, because it's all been great. I mean, I'm actually sitting in a municipality right now that's letting me use their office space. If I was in Baton Rouge, I see Brent Salzman on here. Brent would be more than happy to let me use his office. I've used it many, many times. So that culture and collaboration over the last several years, this has built between all these different stakeholders in here. Let's continue that, and it's all been good. Okay. The other thing is, we've got a lot of folks. Let's research this technology and let's share it with one another. If there's a device out there, if this is something real that will work, if it just come out, extremely good catch. If it's been out for 2 or 3 years, I guess shame on all of us on this call for not reaching out and digging and finding that stuff.
Right.
But
thank you, Craig. Actually, you're cutting in and out just a little bit, but I definitely appreciate your time. Again, sorry we couldn't get Seth on, who's out on the dredge, but again, just
I'm here.
the Seth, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, I couldn't get video to work when I was up in the lever room, but I was able to get Teams working in order to be on here.
Okay, so Seth, you're on the dredge in the Mississippi River today.
Yes, sir, I am.
Yeah, and so yeah, I don't know that we have time to actually go in, but if you want to just express really quickly, give you 30 seconds, just a few sentences on, you being on the dredge every day, what safety means to you.
So safety, it's more than just protecting myself. It's protecting everybody that's on board here, because it's a giant responsibility to try to make sure we don't strike something that could not only catastrophically damage our dredge, but also impact everyone around us, impact traffic on the actual river, and then everybody that I work with. It does get frustrating trying to do the best we can with some outdated as-built and some bathymetry data that could be utilized a different way to give us a better idea of exactly the depths of the pipelines and the exact locations. Something that Craig had brought up, I'll just be real brief with it. With the ENCs, they don't exactly line up with where we get the information from the pipeline company for where they're plotted. ANC can have it 500 feet above the actual location. So that's something we've run into. So it's just, I guess, trying to do the best I can with the data that's available at the time to try to make informed decisions to not only protect myself and my coworkers and the dredge, but also the surrounding communities around us from what we're doing.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Seth. And thanks for joining us, from your dredge on the Mississippi River. And yeah, hey, and at some point, to the group, we've actually done dredge tours aboard a dredge in the field. And so look for some of those opportunities when they come up. It's a very good learning experience. And again, we are going to have some meetings coming up this summer that are in-person meetings that we're going to talk about some of these initiatives. With that, I am going to turn it over to our final speaker, Lou Nash. Lou, welcome, and thank you for attending, my friend.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. And then I'll go ahead and share now.
Okay, we'll ask Tyler to make sure your presentation's on the screen here.
All right,
and
you guys are good there.
I think, Lou, you'll be able to fill in some gaps. We couldn't get our technology going, but you have some really good examples here and information. So, yep, Lou, turn it over to you.
So thanks for that. And I think, to summarize, Craig, the issue, the big issue in the technology is the data of, where is all of this underwater, hazard? How do we locate the pipelines, the cable crossings, and all of those things? And there is technology to address that. With that, there's lots of issues, different mapping datums and all these kinds of things. So that's probably the next hurdle and challenge is where are the hazards? But if you look at it at a smaller scale, where are the hazards within the scope of my job site? That becomes more approachable. So saying that, I'll talk about the positioning side of things with these machines. And that part of it's done. And I want to make 3 points here. Positioning really is almost a utility now. The systems are robust and kind of, I think, through the whole industry. We do see, hiccups with startups or change into a new project, things like that. But once we have a contractor in place with the systems I'm going to show you and up and running, it's pretty much robust after that point. So it is it's utility like. So we start with the positioning, and then with various sensors we can provide guidance, meaning we can know where the tools, we call them, on your big machines. So that could be the cutter head, that could be Craig's, the extents of Craig's dustpan. It can be the spuds that Devin referred to, anchors, any of these things. So we can track, we create what we call offsets, and we can know where they're at. And then other known objects, submerged or what, we can know where they're at relative to those. And we're doing that at centimeter type levels on even on these big machines. So that part of it's done. Um, and I think for us, the technology's there. The issue still becomes, and this word's been used a lot today, the awareness. And I think there's a lot of folks aren't aware of what we can do, positioning big machines on water, and alerting the operators as to where their tool, their cutter head, their auger, their excavator bucket, where that is relative to dangers or hazards or just other infrastructure that we need to avoid. So awareness is the big thing for us, and that's where I think a focus like today and an outreach like today's session is only helpful in that respect. Here you can see this is an excavator guidance, and if you look in the bottom right, you'll see that that's his grade line there in green. He's dressing this slope, building this berm, and you can see the operator knew exactly where everything was, and so much so that he's pulling up rock like he's icing the cake, and just building it right to grade. And and in this case, it's an issue of minimizing the use of rock that they require. But this does show you the accuracies that these machines can get. I mean, this operator knows where his bucket's at. And I want to make the point too that, for us, we're pretty much machine and application agnostic. I mean, with that, I mean, dredges and yeah, cutter heads, dust pans, whatever. Excavators, we're fine with excavators, cranes, clamshell cranes, anything out there digging and moving materials. And even here you can see, a Toyo or an eddy pump attachment on an excavator. It's going to go in a small marina to do some material removal. But basically, the point is we make is if we can draw it in 3D and through Google Sketch, we can add it to our systems and we can guide it. So if you look on the right, there's this pump attachment, and here it is now, underwater again relative to the grade line, and the dark gray there, that's existing material that's got to be removed. So the operator sweeps that through, and he's able to get right to grade. But in the same way, and I'll show you in a minute, if we had some type of infrastructure or something that's included in our models, our 3D views here, we can give the operator guidance to stay away from those hazards. So what I looked at, a quick comparison, we work on the water 99% of the time. We do have some of our projects are adjacent to water. Currently, we're working on a couple of big LNG plants, and on the land side there, we know that the machine operators, they're concerned with the utilities and such as well, and what they refer to as avoidance zones and geographic fences. What I'm hearing is some of what they're experiencing is their systems. As soon as they cross this fence that has an underground utility below it, they're done. The fence gets triggered, the avoidance is there, and it's because they work in a 2D kind of world. It's not that helpful to them when it's buried materials. So mostly two-dimensional. There are three-dimensional systems out there that I'm aware of on land, but they kind of work on a minimum or a maximum. So they'll define a floor, don't go any deeper than this floor, or they'll define a ceiling, and the ceiling is really so that the excavator or the crane doesn't come back and take out an overhead power line or something. But I compare that to what we're doing afloat, and we're actually, I think, well ahead of that. We refer to it ourselves as restricted areas. And like I said, if we can draw it, we can give you guidance to it. So our tools are three-dimensional. So the cutter head is three-dimensional to include the ladder. Boom, stick, and bucket, those are three-dimensional. And that factors in that we can track each of those components of that tool relative to the hazards that we identify. So we do it on a shape-to-shape basis, not the center tooth. There are some systems that use kind of the center tooth, if you will, of a cutter head, because that's, they want to know where they're at the bottom center, because they're looking at depth in that case. But the truth is, you saw the extent, the size of that cutter head earlier, and the left-hand side of that cutter head hitting a pipe is always more damaging as the center tooth hitting that pipe, right? So we track the entire shape, 3D shapes of the hazards or utilities relative to the 3D shape of our machine tool when it's digging. We do that in 2D or 3D. So 2D, we've had 2D restricted areas through wide swaths with cable crossings, fiber optic, things like that. Reefs, to keep machines and barges out of reefs and things. Even what they call now submerged cultural resources, meaning like Native American artifacts and such that the contractor couldn't go in dropping spuds or anchors in these known areas. And then the infrastructure is probably more of a three-dimensional type application where again we insert 3D of the pipeline based on survey results best we can, and then we're able to position relative to that. And then it was mentioned that all of this stuff is moving, underwater, scour, and those kinds of things. And we do take into account, because we're starting with GNSS RTK as the barge and the machine goes up or down. I mean, so does our elevation. So we're accounting for any change in water surface elevation or tides in real time. Here's an image just showing a cutter head dredge, and what's going on here. We're saying, okay, you're clear, and when it comes, we set these thresholds, and we're getting some proximity that now we need to be cautious. It'll first turn yellow, and then when we go too far, it'll turn red. So like a stoplight, caution light. When it turns yellow, you start to slow down, and when it turns red, you stop. So this is a cutter head dredge. Again, machine application agnostic. Here's an excavator. So now the bucket's going to come down, and you'll see, he's in that yellow zone, but whatever threshold we've set for when he gets too close to this pipeline is going to trigger and go red. And we do that. On the left, you can see we have a light that blinks to, alert the operator. And we have an audible alarm that scared the guy to death, based on how we set it. So excavators, and then finally, here's a crane, clamshell, he's digging, doing the same kind of thing. But user defined comfort zones or thresholds. And then if you can hear it now, I got this one, the audible, it's time for him to stop. He's getting too close. And then I made reference that we draw, these tools, boomstick and bucket. And that's a distinction I'd like to show here. Now this is being triggered by the bucket being too close to this pipeline and its frame. But now as the bucket moves away, you're going to see what happens is you can see the pink line at the end of the stick. So, and the pink line on the pipe, those are the 2 points that are of concern. So it moved from the bucket being too close to the stick being too close, because again, lay that stick on top of this pipeline, that's potential for as much damage as hitting it with the bucket, right? So we can, it's 3D shape versus 3D shape. And that's kind of the status of where we're at in the industry now. And that's what I've got for now, Ed.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Lou. Very, very cool graphics. And, please reach out. Hey, Lou, before we jump off, can you put your email in the chat? I can see a lot of this being very useful on land as well. And I tell you what, it looks like we're at time. I am going to ask Devin Carlock to take us home and close out this meeting. Again, this should be a a facilitation of the discussion and continuing discussion and evergreen. And so please, I encourage everyone, go to the Marine Safe 811 website, reach out to any of us on the call, get involved, and, just help us, move the needle. Devin, I'll take it home to you for some closing comments.
Okay, thank you, Ed. We need to stop treating utility protection as a step. We need to treat it as a system. Detect it, verify it, communicate it, and monitor it. If any one of those fails, the whole system fails. This comes down to culture. Do we empower the crews to stop work? Do we question assumptions? Or do we need to verify instead of assume? When a utility is struck, it's just not a delay, it's a risk of life, environmental impact, and industry credibility. So ask yourself, if I walked onto your dredge right now and asked the operator to show me where the utilities are, could they do it confidently? If not, we have work to do. We can eliminate every risk, but this one is one we can control, because risk we can't see are the ones that we have to respect the most. At the end of the day, it's not about pipelines or cables. It's protecting our people. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you, and well said. I want to close the meeting, and I appreciate everyone. Look for a link to this meeting. Tyler, I assume those all who registered, maybe we can circle back with a link to this that people can share within their companies or with their stakeholder groups. And let's see. So with that, again, I want to thank all the speakers today. I want to thank the participants. Hey, we're all just trying to be alive, protect the environment, and protect our infrastructure. It doesn't get any more simpler than that. Although the challenge to get there is we still got work to do. So with that, I will adjourn this podcast. Thank everyone again for your time and your effort and your devotion and your future commitments.